Hello everyone and welcome to Young China. We are a half Chinese Brit and a Siberian Russian living here in Shanghai. We use our unique perspectives to demystify and translate Chinese culture and lifestyle. My name is Lucien.
And my name is Artem. We are two entrepreneurs who made it in China, and now we want to share this experience with you.
Okay, so before we begin, why don't we actually just introduce ourselves? Tell the audience who we are, what we do, how long we've been here, that kind of thing. So why don't you go first?
I'm a part of 3 businesses. I'm a founder of the most popular Russian media outlet focusing on China, called EKD, co-owner of a sourcing and product development company called You China, and founder of a brand called Laoai, which is famous for creative and cultural products, and it got famous last year, and we got featured in many media outlets like South China Morning Post or Renmin Zhibao.
Okay, yeah. So can you actually so for some people who don't speak Chinese, what does Laoai mean? Why is it called Laoai?
Laoai is a foreigner, so we
it's the Chinese
both
word for foreigner.
Yeah. So what's about you?
So as I say, my name is Lucien Pang. You can find me on LinkedIn. I own a PR agency here called Generation Now, and we help grow global brands in China. We've helped brands like Grand Hyatt, Sheraton, and La Bottega really speak to the next generation of Chinese consumers.
Okay, so what we are gonna talk about in our pilot podcast?
Well, the name of our podcast is Why China, or indeed, Why Not China? And the reason we picked this is actually when I go back to England, and I'm sure, Artem, when you go back to Russia, people say, hey, why China? And you know what? Sometimes I'm just like, why not China? It's such an interesting place. It's such a vibrant, exciting place. Things are changing. I mean, it sounds like such a cliche, but really no 2 days are different.
So in our first episode of Young China podcast, we're gonna talk about why not China.
The paradigm has really changed since we started planning doing this podcast. When we'd first started thinking about doing the podcast, the coronavirus was of course a big deal already, but things have changed a lot here and abroad. So in the last 2 days, in China, they've actually banned entry to all foreigners. That includes legal foreigners, people who are working here, permanent residents. That doesn't just mean tourists, that means basically everyone except for diplomats. So that really changes things here about when you ask why China, because even with the best economy and the best conditions in the world, I mean, you just can't come in.
Yeah, and that's why we were thinking about, should we still do the same topic for the first episode or not, because now no one can come. But then we realized, anyway, in China it's almost gone. For sure in the world it will be much better in few months. So probably after few months or half a year, maybe even more foreigners will think about China, because as we see now how China managing all this stuff, as I seen some news, Western countries really appreciate Chinese help. And do you know what I mean?
Well, I think what you're trying to say, and I will translate and demystify this Russian culture and lifestyle by saying for you that I think what you're trying to say is that China's image has changed a lot over the past few months, right? And I think that's been informed, of course, in a reflection, of course, not only of how China has handled everything, but also the way that different countries have been handling things, right? So, for example, if you look at America and, well, for obvious reasons, there has always been this animosity between the two governments. It means that from there, China will come out looking worse to Americans, I believe. But to Europeans, particularly Italians, Spanish, this kind of thing, I think China will actually come out looking a lot better, a lot more powerful, a lot more friendly, a lot more efficient than they looked before.
So we probably can expect more foreigners coming to China after outbreak is over. So that's why we still gonna talk about why China and why not China, and why this country a good place for foreigners, And I want to start with some numbers. Now China is now home to estimated more than 900,000 people who were born elsewhere. So China doesn't make public the exact number of foreign nationals living in China. That's why it's estimated. And of course, that doesn't count the large number who are living here permanently, but without legal permanent status, like business visa, tourist visa. So most of these foreigners concentrate in the larger cities like Shanghai, Beijing, Shenzhen, and like not only Shenzhen, Guangdong province, south of China. And interesting thing that more than 23% of expats in China, they live in Shanghai. So it means like every fourth in China live in Shanghai.
So I think that's a very easy thing to understand to anyone who's lived or even visited Shanghai. The city is such an international place. It's so vibrant in its outlook, right? And actually, I know a few foreigners here who've been here for years, and they don't speak any Chinese at all, and they seem to get around pretty well.
Yeah, and do you know the top countries for like expats here?
Well, you're asking me this question, so I can only assume it's a trap question. But I will walk into your trap. I will say probably the countries which have a very international exposure with their economy. So places like America, the UK, France, these kinds of places.
The top countries are Japan, South Korea, and the US.
Okay.
And yeah, probably US citizens, they're also Chinese immigrants. A lot of Huaqiao are coming here to
what does Huaqiao mean?
Huaqiao means Chinese immigrants.
Okay.
Most of them, like in US, Canada, Australia.
So we call them ABCs, American-born Chinese, CBCs, Canadian-born Chinese, and BBCs, which is British.
And there are a lot of
Chinese,
a lot of developing countries residents, like post-Soviet countries, like Russia, and Africa. A lot of, for example, in Guangzhou, more than 100,000 Africans.
That's loads.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Wow, that's a real like city. Almost.
Yeah, they even have their like own districts. They're like, and you come. I can imagine in China, like 80% sometimes, like around you, people around you are Africans. Wow. They're not Chinese.
That's pretty interesting.
Can feel like in Africa they have their own restaurants there and all the things. So, but many of them don't live like with a permanent status, still like business visa, whatever. We cannot count this developing countries. I think. I mean, like we don't know the real numbers.
But that's also, that's also not to say that people from developed countries don't come here illegally. I know that previously, American citizens could get a 10-year tourist visa to come to China. And I think you had to leave, every 2 months or every 3 months to renew that. So I knew people, and I still know people, I think, who work and live here on that tourist visa. So they'd leave every 2 or 3 months, go to Hong Kong for a day or an afternoon, come back, and they're back onto that time again.
But it's changing. I mean, like I
think it's changing.
More strict.
Sure. I mean, even England, we had a 2-year tourist visa, right? So,
okay, why we don't start from ourselves? Like, why we come here? Why you come here, Lucien?
Well, I think my story is very typical for a lot of people like myself who are ethnically Chinese, right? So ever since I was very young,
and ethnically Indian.
And yes, and ethnically Indian as well. So I'm half
but
Chinese.
But you come to
Indian.
China.
But I've come to China. Well, I did my time in India, and that was a very tough time and a very tough place to be. So anyway, so ever since I was a kid, we've come to China a lot, right? Just to visit family or just to travel, whatever it is. And so I've always had this very strong connection to China, and I remember actually, this is actually a kind of a stupid story, but I remember coming to Shanghai for the first time when I was 17. And I remember standing at the Bund, right?
This is the most famous place in Shanghai with all these skyscrapers view. Wait.
That was fine. That was funny, actually.
My Russian accent not funny. Okay, yeah, this is the most famous place and like with the stunning lighting show and all the things.
And I remember standing there and just looking at this skyline of all these skyscrapers, these beautiful buildings, and being like, wow, I really, really want to come back. And actually, I told a couple of my local Chinese friends this, and they were like, you have the mind of a farmer, because they come to the Bund, see the skyline, and they think, wow, I want to come and live here as well. So, in that sense, I'm a local farmer, which is fine. I want to get into agriculture at one point in my life. But yeah, I mean, actually for me, I didn't know the economy was so roaring. I didn't know it was such a vibrant city. For me, at the age of 17, I hadn't done any research. I just liked the vibe of the city. I just liked it, right? So I promised myself that I would come back one day. And around 25, I just thought, you know what? Why not now? And I just popped over.
No, but it's past 8 years before you come.
Well, I had to go to university. I had to work a little bit at home in the UK. And I went to India for a year after after university. I worked there for an NGO. And then I came back to the UK.
Okay.
And what about you? What's your story?
Actually, I'm very proud of my story with China because I had this, how it's called, like early professional orientation. I made my choice when I was really young, about 7 years old. I thought like I really love foreign languages. I really love foreign cultures, and that's why I want to be like diplomat. And then when it was time to choose my major, very popular major was international relations. But Europe was so far because my hometown in Siberia, it's a very small town called Bisk, near Altai Mountains, near the border of Mongolia and Kazakhstan. So for me, China was like even closer than Moscow because the flight from Novosibirsk, the biggest hub in Siberia, to Moscow, it's 4 hours and a half. The same to Beijing. And at that time, Europe was not that powerful already. I mean, like, it's not that, and English was not something unique. But I was thinking about, that time in my university was only the second year when they launched this major, China Studies. And it was, China, what I know about China? Like, nothing. Jackie Chan, Great Wall, and rice, and that's it. And a lot of, like, cheap goods, right, made in China. But at that time, I already have some critical thinking, and I was and realized that Russian-Chinese relations getting better, and Chinese economy like growing so fast, and no one understand anything about China. Like no one else. So I thought, okay, if I even can speak a medium Chinese and understand something about this country, for sure I will find a job. That was the main reason why I choose this major. I was thinking like, okay, I will try 1 year. If I don't like this, I can change. And I liked it. Yeah, on our major we have it's not linguistic major. It's not only Chinese language but also China culture, Chinese politics, economy, geography, all the things about China.
Okay. Actually, one thing that you mentioned just now was the China and Russia relations. That's, growing up in the UK, what we learned in history was that China and the Soviet Union, because they're both communist countries, had very good relations. So actually, I'm a little bit surprised that you're saying Russians don't really understand anything about China.
Yeah, it was the early Soviet Union period, but when Stalin died, so Mao Zedong didn't like the new politics in the new main line in Russia. So before 90s, it was not good relation at all, and we even have some border conflicts with some people died and all the things. If you go deeper in history, so for me, China was not like maybe for European people, they think, it's obvious that Russian people go to China. But when it was like 12 years ago when I chose this major, it was like super strange, even for Siberian people. It was like, what? Why China? It's like, why China? Yeah. And I said, why not? After second year of my university, first time I went to China. And that was the final dot, I don't know, in this story, because That time I even never been to Moscow. So Beijing, I went to Beijing, Chinese capital, earlier than I went to Moscow. I went to Changchun, it's Dongbei, for 3 month summer courses.
So Dongbei is the northeast of China. It's a very cold, very
and
like,
close to Russia, actually.
Close to Russia side, yeah.
And that time I also traveled to like Dalian, Tianjin, Beijing, and Beijing was just after Olympic Games.
Wow. I mean, that must have been really special then.
Yeah, I was surprised so much. And even Changchun, Changchun is the tier 3 city. Surprised me so. It was more developed than Novosibirsk, the 3rd city in Russia.
Interesting. So actually the way that we divide cities in China is we do it in tiers. So Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, tier 1. And then the second tier
is like Hangzhou and
Hangzhou, Nanjing, ones that you might have heard of. And then third tier is cities that most foreigners will not have heard of at all.
So after first time I went to China, I just got back to Russia and realized that I liked China. It was a lot of surprising things, yes, but I realized, it's right direction. And when I come back, a lot of friends start to ask me, like, could you help me to find something in China? Now you've been there, maybe you can help us to find suppliers, factories, whatever, or help to make negotiations. So that time I realized there's like demand on China, on Chinese business, all the things high.
I think this also was a time, 12 years ago when the internet wasn't as developed as it is now, and they didn't have platforms like Alibaba, right, where you can actually contact factories directly on the internet.
I think it just launched or something. But anyway,
it was in its infancy, right? So people were still not familiar with the things that we take for granted today.
Yeah, so that time I decided I'm going to finish my university and just get my diploma and come back to China as soon as possible because like, oh my God, it's so developed, it's so good. I just want to go back. And after third year, I also traveled through border of Kazakhstan and like 12 hours on bus to Kazakhstan, then 24 hours to Urumqi. And then I like getting like the cheapest trains, like standing 14 hours, and sleeping in McDonald's. Because like I didn't get to my hotel on time on metro. So I mean like even I got through this kind of stories.
Yeah.
But still, I didn't say I got shocked or something. I don't know. Maybe for European people it's different, but in Russia is also developing countries. We are different culture. Yeah, China is also for us is kind of different. But I don't know. I was like well prepared.
That sounds very interesting. Actually, it sounds. I think that when I talk to some of my Russian Ukrainian friends, I think they have the same kind of outlook on China, like in the way that I think Europeans look to America or we look to England. It seems to me a lot of Russians, Ukrainians, Kazakhs, Uzbeks, this kind of thing, they look to China in the way that we look to America and the UK.
So let's go back to your story. What make you stay here when you you said like after 7 years of first time you came here, right? You come back like not forever, but with this
plan I had a very clear plan that I wanted to live here, right? And it's actually a very big leap of faith, right? You don't have your family. You don't have your friends. You don't know anything.
But what plan do you have? Like you're coming here to work or what?
Well, this is the whole thing. I didn't have really a plan. I just wanted to be here because I'd always remember that like this incredible vibe of the city. And that's why, as I say, it's a big leap of faith because I didn't have any friends, didn't have any family. I didn't speak any Chinese, right? I certainly couldn't read any Chinese. Like the system of governance is completely different. There are just so many unknowns to China, right? And it's not even like with the language. If I read, say, a German article, there are at least words that look similar to English so I can kind of understand what the article is about. With Chinese, I mean, the language barrier is just so incredible that there's no way you can decipher anything. right? It's a completely different ball game.
Yeah,
So
but you have been here before, so you were ready. Oh.
I'd been here before, but then you realize that growing up here or living here is completely different to coming to travel, right? Coming to travel is always is always an adventure. It's always a journey. It's always fun.
Okay, but what was your first job here? I mean, like anyway, you come here with your savings and then to hustle here and to find some job, or you already had some offers or something.
No, I literally just came. I'd come on holiday another time at the age I think 25, and I was like, you know what? Now is the time. I'm just gonna stick around. So I found a teaching job.
So that was original plan.
There was no original plan, but that ended up being the plan, right? And that was my stepping stone. So I learned some Chinese, built up some connections, got to know the city, got to know the startup scene, got to know the media scene, and from there I then took the leap to further my career after that.
So, and what makes you stay here?
I mean, I didn't know that it was this economic power. I just liked the beautiful lights on the skyline. But it turns out that those beautiful lights on the skyline are there for a reason. The reason they've got all these skyscrapers is because Shanghai is an economic powerhouse. And once I got here and I started working, I very quickly came to realize that.
But you went to another cities and provinces, and you could see that it's not all China is the same as Shanghai.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's the thing. Like when you're traveling around China, it's a very beautiful thing, and there are lots of places that are very underdeveloped, very beautiful, but that there's no way you could make a living there, right? And that's what makes Shanghai so different. What's really interesting about you, Artem, is that unlike most foreigners who come to Shanghai or China, you have a very deep understanding of not only the country, the culture, but also the language. So what makes you stay here? And do you feel that you've had a very different experience to other people here?
Yeah, I think my experience is different to many of people because, I don't know, maybe 90% of people who I meet here, foreigners, they don't have China studies. Yeah, a lot of people have Chinese language major, which make them probably really great level of Chinese, much better than mine because I'm not linguistic major. But to understand the country, you should understand the history and culture and all this thing. We even had this history of Tibet and Xinjiang. We had a history of national minorities. So I think when I look on China, I mean why is all good to me in China? Even some problems of China, for me, it's like an object of professional interest. I'm observing. I like it. So, and I got into here, and why I want to stay, because while China is changing so fast, I want to be here. I can feel this changing, and I live in TV show. I mean, in Russia, we say stability, and we're already 20 years and nothing changed. And here, every day you have some changes, every day something new, and you can learn so much. And I really used to live in this kind of speed. This is really cool.
And this is actually something that they actually call it 中国速度, right? Which means China speed.
Yeah.
And they use it to explain lots and lots of things from the speed that cities just go up, like these skyscrapers up, to the way that businesses grow from startups to IPO within 2-3 years, right? That's all China speed. Everything here is super, super fast.
That was our stories, but we still have many another categories of foreigners. And yeah, we prepared this list to just categorize. Maybe it's not, hope it won't be offensive to someone. So let's split them into a few groups and talk about also salaries and who they are, right? The first group is obviously executives, scientists, engineers, and many of them have so-called Chinese green card. It's 10 years residence permit.
So China, when they give you a working visa, they actually divide you into 3 categories
Yeah,
based on
yeah.
points, right? So there's A, B, and C, depending on how good your Chinese is, depending on your education level, master's, PhD, that kind of thing, depending actually on things like whether you won a Nobel Prize, and that of course like pops you right to the top. Depending on your job title, work experience, these kinds of things.
Yeah, and Chinese language actually also HSK helps to get some bonuses. And with category C now in the big cities, you even cannot get a working visa. It means like they want better and better specialists here.
Yeah.
And so these top executive scientists, engineers, most of them they not most, for sure they A category, and their salary is probably like over $5,000. No, more, I think. 10,000 or something.
Well over $5,000 a month. I think that's where it starts to get into, say, 10,000 US a month, right? Certainly more, actually.
Yeah, and they also getting apartments and many other things. I know one ex-Russian who worked in NATO in US. For NATO, he's working on a cancer cure. So wow. And he got in Guangzhou so amazing offer. So he like left US like in half a year. He left and now he has been working and living in Guangzhou more than 10 years. And he happy not only with his salaries, because most of these people, they are also into the career,
right?
in the field. They want to really make something great in this world. And when Chinese people, like all the university, give them all labs, all equipment, sponsorship, grants, and he's like, I need like 5 new like interns. Okay, they give them interns. That's also very important for this kind of people.
I think it's also one thing that's interesting to note is that category A people, I think they're more and more specialized, right? Because whereas 20 years ago, a lot of expats were able to come and take top level jobs, now locals can do the same thing way better, faster, and probably cheaper as well. And, like the most educated locals, they've gone to our best universities, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, whatever, and then they come back. So they've got that dual knowledge of the outside of the West, plus China itself, plus the language, plus the relationships, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, and then we go to middle-level professionals, including professional teachers and models, because they're also experts in their field sometimes. Not all English teachers have have a teacher's degree.
We'll get to that later.
Because these people with middle professionals, including professional
teachers,
they have over 30,000 sometimes the salary.
RMB.
Yeah. So let's say like from 3,000 to 5,000 US dollars per month.
Which is very generous, which is a great salary.
Yes, because these middle-level professionals, it's not something unique. Some unique guys. It's just like IT guys, designers, a good teacher. Okay guys, and getting these salaries in Russia is like it's impossible. In Russia, in Moscow, executive getting $5,000.
Wow.
So I probably in Europe also. I don't know how about Britain, like a clerk, like in office.
Probably like a white collar worker in the UK, I think around £2,000-3,000 a month.
Okay, so it's comparable, and life here is still cheaper. Even Shanghai is very expensive, cheap, but you still can find much cheaper like food and restaurants and even apartments. So, okay, let's go to another big group. It's students. Which is actually the salaries sometimes if they got government stipend, government allowances, right? They're getting masters getting like 3,000 RMB. It's like $500, monthly.
That's a lot,
and they getting dorms and all the things. And China now giving more and more to developing countries, especially.
So China actually has this very intricate system of giving out scholarships.
Yeah.
And they're very generous with it, right?
Yeah.
Very, very generous, from free university like you say, free tuition, free dorms, like a monthly stipend, and
hundreds of thousands of students from developing countries coming here, and it's increasing a lot of Africans, a lot of post-Soviet countries.
I think that's really something to do with soft power, right? But I think there are criticisms here as well. I mean, it's not the most needy people from Ghana or most needy people from Uzbekistan. It's actually the actual, not just the smartest, but also the elites of Uzbekistan and the elites of whichever African country coming over. Because I have a couple of friends, who studied in China. One is the son of the ambassador to China from their country, right? I shouldn't mention the country. And then also I have a friend from Uzbekistan. His parents are, they're pretty wealthy. They're very well educated. And so these are the people that they're actually bringing into China.
But there is still opportunity. I know the scholarship, it's not that easy to get, really. Even you are like from poor family, whatever, it's nothing special there. You just a lot of paperwork. And you need to explain why you really, why China?
Then again, why China? Yeah, sure. But again, like with anything, right? There is that cost of access, that cost of knowledge.
Don't you think actually I didn't find these statistics about like European and US students here in China? Not that many?
I don't think there's many. I understand why, unless you have a specific love for China, why would you? Right, because still, if you look at the world rankings for universities, it's still all Europe and America, right? China doesn't feature that heavily. I think maybe Tsinghua and Beida, they do in the top 100 or top 50, but on the whole, it's still mostly the traditional big names that you know.
Mm-hmm. But still, many people like you maybe see a lot of opportunities in China. And here, like if you study here, for sure you will be more ready for this.
But that's one of those things, right? If you don't come, you don't know, right? So you have to have that opportunity, when you're a kid, like your parents bring you here and then you get to see it. Wow, this is a roaring economy. And then you come here. Because actually, the view of China when you're not here is somewhat skewed, I would say, somewhat biased.
Entrepreneurs. That's the fourth group. It's entrepreneurs here.
Yeah,
it's very different, very diverse. A lot of like wholesale market guys, from Inwu, Iwu. It's
the world's largest market, right?
Yes, and it's market city, and like in Guangzhou, a lot of wholesale markets, and that guys also entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're getting like a big jump from there, like they start to live from like very small wholesale amounts, 20 phone cases, and then they're getting to 100, 1,000. There are a lot of these success stories.
Sure.
But there are a lot of startups in Shanghai, a big startup community, right? Some of them got good investments here.
This is actually a very interesting case that I'd like to ask you about. A lot of the foreign-led startups here that deal with technology, how do you feel their performance is, and actually how easy is it for them to really get into the structure of China?
It's tough, but we know many stories, really. When foreign startups or joint ventures getting good allowances from government or from venture capital here, and China Accelerator, for example, it's one of the most famous accelerator in the world actually, and they have a very good traction. The startups have good traction. It's for sure it's not for China, for whole China. But if you talk about Shanghai, we now talk about entrepreneurs group, so who startups also, and so in Beijing, in Shenzhen and Shanghai, I think it's really more and more startups come here. It's tough, but a lot of hustlers here.
Yeah, well, that's true. Ultimately, it is a very tough game here. Though from my understanding, I think a lot of foreigners here, we do, similar to me, right? When we start our own companies, a lot of them, they're agencies. So we're helping big brands from outside of China come into China, helping them grow, helping them spread, helping them do, service them.
Yeah.
I think actually a lot of the entrepreneurs I know are agency owners.
Yeah, and I don't think there are many big entrepreneurs here, because like when they start from China, when they get better, anyway, they go to like US or to Europe for opening like international headquarters, whatever. Because it's really, if you earn money and you grow in China, you should leave your money here. I mean, like most of the money they want you to spend here.
Yeah.
That's why they give all these allowances or good taxes policy. But if you want to go international, probably China is not the best place here.
Actually, that's an interesting topic as well. Who are the most well-known foreign entrepreneurs in China that you've heard of?
Actually, the guy who made Chunar, he was a foreigner.
Okay.
Or
C-Trip.
Are you sure?
He was one of the first people on C-Trip. I mean, he's one of the founding partners of C-Trip.
Yeah.
One of the guys that I would say is very well known is the person I used to work for at a company called Naked Hub. And Naked Hub got bought out by WeWork for, I think, half a billion US dollars.
No, million.
Half a billion US.
Half a billion. Okay.
Yeah, 450 million US dollars. So that probably was the most well-known entrepreneur. But then his business was very public facing, right? I'm sure there must be, factory owners or this kind of thing, kind of a little bit more hidden that we don't know about.
No, I know a lot of Russian factory owners here. Like they produce even not only for Russia, sometimes even for Chinese people now. And yeah, there are a lot. So probably most of them, even when they settle up their business, they hire general manager and then they leave and develop another country's market. We have two last groups. First is like family and relatives, which is really obvious. So if there are two types, family people and family visas, right? Here is who come with their wives or husbands together from their country. And for example, if your husband get a good contract here, like in a big international bank, you come here and you bring all your family. So, and I was really surprised in Shanghai. There is like so many this wife clubs, foreign wife clubs.
Yeah.
So they have their own activity, their own life, their own circle. I didn't see this in Shenzhen when in Guangdong.
And you know what? It's a big market. And actually, if you probably most retail is directed at women anyway. But I think in China, Chinese women, their spending power is enormous. I mean, it's almost shocking.
I mean, Chinese women. But we are talking about expats.
I know, but just the culture of buying and selling in China to women is a very strong one. I think it doesn't matter whether it's foreign women or Chinese women, right? Because they control the finances or they have the children. They make a lot of those decisions.
Yeah, so and many of another group of family members here is like Chinese, the person who have Chinese spouse, right? So then many mixed couples also here. But the point is, you need to choose: you're getting family visa or you're getting working visa. You cannot. So when you have family visa, you cannot work here. That's strange, and you cannot get green card. So it's a bit.
Complex, but I think that's because there still isn't enough of those examples to form policy around it. So I think within 5 years they will have.
Yeah, and the last category, which is like a bit, we call it foreign-faced jobs, which is now getting down.
Yeah, I mean, definitely less and less and less, right?
But who is this? It's unprofessional models and English teachers, DJs, singers, music bands, hostess, and most of them here is like not legal, work not legal. I mean, I know good musicians here who works on working visa and they're professionals. But I also know still in like smaller towns, cities, I have like Ukrainian, Russian friends who is just they are not musicians. They are just white faces. They make this. They don't play real guitar.
Yeah.
They just like holding it and make the
actions. They go through the actions, right? Yeah, sure.
They just open their mouth without
just miming the songs.
Yes.
Right? I think actually that's changing a lot, but you still see it, right? There is, in certain industries, there is still that value to being white or being foreign. And I think that's changing very, very quickly. But certainly you still see lots of models, or like at events, they kind of want, tall, foreign-looking guys, or even at nightclubs, like the very fancy nightclubs, they hire like the very big, like very broad black bouncer, because there's that stereotype of them being, very strong.
Sometimes they want to, highlight this international community that like we are international company, and I know some friends who are actually, they are not good designer, for example, but this design company have already 100 Chinese people, and they want at least one foreigner to show off.
Yeah,
I even know this thing. My friend designer, she was good designer, but she said sometimes she want to give her own ideas, her like initiative, her idea. They don't care. They say go to this negotiation, just sit with us and like say yes, like just to show that they're international team.
Yeah, so the foreign face jobs, that's actually one that a lot of people, when they first get to Shanghai, particularly younger people or people who are still at university.
But this field is dying. I mean,
it's definitely dying. It's definitely dying. But it's really like performing monkeys, right?
And
it's like at nightclubs, they'll pay you 200 RMB to go to a nightclub because you're a foreigner, and then you'll be like dancing and stuff, and it just makes the club feel more international, that kind of thing. Or going to shows, or English teaching. I know from friends and things, like British-born Chinese who are obviously natively fluent in English, who have been refused jobs at English schools because they don't look like an English person. Parents of the students, they don't believe that this could actually be someone from the UK.
I even know one girl from Russia who was told by Chinese school to change her hair to blonde. She was like black haired. That's ridiculous. Okay, I mean, like we can talk about so much time, but I think it's not the best community of foreigners here.
But but certainly the most interesting, I think, right? I mean, it's
because it's dying.
Because it's dying, but also because there's an element of like, I mean, I find them interesting because there's an element of like survival there, because actually for them life is really tough, right? They're always living on the edge, they're always living kind of illegally, they're the ones who get paid the least, they're the ones who get lots of regulations broken against them. Their agents or their employers will be lying to them or abusing them in that sense.
But because of this community of people, sometimes we have problems because Chinese people think that all foreigners like them, because many of them in their countries, they don't have
prospects, right?
They don't have lose anything. How to say?
They've got nothing to lose.
Yes, they don't have anything to lose, and that's why their behavior sometimes is not good. They come to China for easy money. They don't have any serious plans here. I can get some money and savings after 3 years and just leave China. So they don't care about the image of foreign people here. So I'm going to our conclusion, and just like I repeat these six types of six groups of foreigners here. So first is executive scientists, engineers, like top foreigners here, probably holding Chinese green card. Middle level professionals, including professional teachers, models, students, entrepreneurs, family and relatives, and the last one, foreign face jobs. And these foreign face jobs actually giving us this thing, how to say, that the foreigners' quality here are low. this is my subjective opinion. I really think that quality of foreigners here in China is really low.
I think on the whole, I think you're right, particularly for Western foreigners coming to China, unless you've got like a real interest in the culture or you're ethnically Chinese. Why would you leave your very nice, safe, good economy country, Europe or America or whatever?
I think for Russia and in other countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan is a bit different because there is not easy, especially without native English, right? Or like very good English, go to like European countries or the US. And especially last 6 years, 7 years when we got this economic sanctions and this image of Russian people. So I think even like okay experts, okay specialists could come to China here from Russia. But still, IT guy and cool designers, I mean like if you are really cool and you have opportunity to go for work in US or Britain, they will choose Britain or UK. I mean, like they won't come to China anymore. So that's why it's not about like foreign-faced jobs people here. It's also about like when you are like a middle IT guy, you can get here much higher salary than in Europe or somewhere else. Because really salaries for this like middle level, we call it professionals, but probably their professional skills are very like
very average or mediocre.
Yeah. So
very iban.
Yeah,
some good Chinglish.
Yeah, we need maybe add more Chinglish in this podcast. Okay, just let's finish this podcast with a conclusion about: would you recommend to come to China people who look for like professional opportunities, or like what kind of people should come to China?
I think as long as you hit the minimum requirements, as a person, you've really got to be tough, right? Because China, it's not like Europe. It's not like where you're from. It's a completely different culture. The food, the interactions on the street, the way people talk, the language, all of these things, it's completely different to what you'd be used to back in the West or America or, I'm guessing Russia and Central Asia also. So that I think is the big problem. However, if you are tough and ambitious and hardworking, then I think that, and you're willing to put in the time and the hours to learn Chinese, I think that this is a wonderful place to be and further your career.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, I have this small research here, Expat Insider 2019, and here is said like that people don't like to stay in China because of Great Firewall of China.
The VPN,
for sure,
right? So,
VPN and all the censorship all together. Too much pollution, for sure. We didn't mention this. But at the same time, they mentioned great transportation and very convenient to travel by high-speed railway. Language, a big challenge. All people say this is a really big challenge. They also say that cost of living here is not an issue yet. So it's really good in terms of cost of living. Very friendly attitude. A lot of people mention very friendly attitude of local people. But very expensive education. So if you have a family here in China, it probably would be much more expensive than in your country.
Yeah, sure. I mean, because if you have a child, like unless it's a Chinese citizen, it has to go to international school, right? Fees are extortionate. I just want to go back to what you said about foreigners being very welcomed here. I think foreigners, they're welcomed by individuals and they're welcomed by the state, but I'm not so sure how welcome they are by society, right? So the government is very friendly to you. They invite you over, and your neighbors and people on the street will probably be very friendly to you. But people who don't know you, I think there is still that there's a level of maybe fear or misunderstanding there, like particularly in terms of like online comments and stuff. So I've got friends who have like a Chinese girlfriend or a white girl who has a Chinese boyfriend, and when they post up on the internet, of course they get a lot of support, but sometimes they get some pretty nasty messages, like, why are you stealing our women, or this kind of thing.
But it's not common thing everywhere. In Russia we also have this too, like if you try to date a Russian girl, even you even Brit people won't like it. So I think it's not the issue, and it's not coming to open aggression. Never happened to me.
But the country is not a very, this culture is not a very aggressive culture.
Yeah.
Right.
They just opened to the world, let's say 30 years, 40 years ago. It's not that much after they was closed for so long time. And I think it takes some time. Young people is really open to foreigners. I think next generation won't have this issue at all. As for me, actually, I also could mention the same what I told you later from this report. Yeah, I'm not really happy about all this censorship and the Great Wall, VPN. When you have international online business, it's really hard. And when you go out of China and use free internet, you understand how tough actually is here.
Yeah.
We just used to it. But convenience of online services here, all that apps, all this cashless economy, I really forgot what is cash is. And yeah, it showed us that China is way
ahead
and way developed, much more developed than any country in the world, I think, in terms of online services and on delivery and e-commerce. It's you understand that I don't know, the US is 20 years back.
Yeah, China is one of those interesting cases where in some ways it's advanced beyond recognition, right? Certainly since I've been coming to China as a kid, there are some aspects that have stayed very similar, right? In some ways that are just completely not the same. Like, for example, the way that Artem was talking about cashless payment, right? I think back home we're getting used to tap to pay, tap with your phone or tap with your card. Here they've had it for years, right? Scan a QR code. That's it. I don't even have cash. I literally don't have cash.
We probably should make more podcasts about every advantage and every minus of the things. I think our
I think we'd get censored if we did every disadvantage. So let's just do one about all the advantages.
Okay, we will check your comments. That was first pilot episode. That's why probably we have many things to work on and get more comments of you. What do you want to listen about? Young China, new China, from our perspectives. We have been living here for a long time, and we can answer, I think, and demystify any topic you want, right? And in the end of each episode, we want to recommend you a book or a movie to understand better China. This time I want to recommend it to you. It's a book, Shark's Fin and Sichuan Paper, a sweet sour memoir of eating in China. It's a British author, a girl who stayed here in 90s. So it's why China? She was one of the first foreigners students in Chengdu.
Wow.
So
really back in the day.
Yeah,
right.
And she explaining Chinese culture through the food, and the food is one of the most important thing here in China. It's like a god, Even when they ask how do you do it, means how are you?
They say Trvalama, which means it literally means have you eaten?
Yeah, but you don't need to reply, or if you reply, you can keep speaking about food for half an hour. So this is amazing book, must read. And we are waiting your feedback on our first pilot episode.
Okay.
And the next one probably will be about coronavirus and how we survived here and what we learned and what we can share with the rest of the world. And you for sure you would be okay. We passed it.
Yeah, well, we passed it, but it was a tough one. Anyway, look, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Artem. Thank you, me. And we really, really look forward to hearing your comments and making a better podcast and improving every step. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye-bye.